Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The acid rain on Thesara Prime tasted like copper coins and broken promises. Rob Kane tilted his head back, letting the droplets sting his face while neon advertisements bled their colors down the slick metal streets. Pink and blue puddles caught the light from 1,000 holographic signs, each one whispering in languages that made his teeth ache. 6 months on this rock. 6 months of small-time smuggling runs and bodyguard gigs for merchants who paid in cryptocurrency that might be worthless by morning. The bass from underground clubs thrummed through his boot soles, mixing with the hiss of rain on hot metal and the distant wail of patrol sirens. He'd come here to disappear, to forget the weight of a sword in his hand and the disappointed eyes of a master who'd trained him to be something more than another drifter in the void. The crowd parted around him. Humans still carried enough novelty value on Thesara to earn wary space, and he caught his reflection in a shop window. Dark hair plastered to his skull, 3-day stubble, the kind of lean muscle that spoke of function over form, just another merc trying to make rent. The knife came from behind, aimed at his kidney. Rob stepped left without thinking, caught the wrist, and had the Vraxian face down in a puddle before his conscious mind registered the attack. The alien gurgled something that might have been an apology or a curse. Rob's fingers found the credit chip in the would-be thief's pocket, pocketed it, and released him. "Try the tourist next time," he said in trade speak. "They don't bite back." The Vraxian scrambled away on all 6 limbs, leaving Rob alone again in the rain. He rolled his shoulders, annoyed at himself. 3 years of playing normal, and his body still betrayed him with every perfect reaction. The master's training went bone deep, written in muscle memory that no amount of cheap whiskey could erase. Thunder rolled overhead. Not the clean crack of earth storms, but the grinding sound of atmospheric processors struggling against Thesara's toxic sky. Time to get inside before the rain turned from unpleasant to genuinely dangerous. That's when she crashed into him. The impact sent them both stumbling. Rob's hand went to his sidearm by instinct, then froze as he registered what he was seeing. Blue skin that shimmered like deep water under moonlight. Pink hair, soaked and clinging to her neck and shoulders. A torn silk dress that might have been worth a month's rent before someone had ripped it nearly in half. And a silver collar around her throat. Not jewelry, but a servant's mark. The kind that could deliver enough voltage to drop a bull. She fell to her knees in the puddle at his feet, and Rob's chest tightened at the sight. Not from pity. He'd trained himself out of that luxury, but from something more primitive. She was gorgeous in a way that transcended species, all curves and grace even in desperation, and the way she looked up at him through those silver-violet eyes made his pulse skip. "Please," she gasped in accented English, her voice like warm honey over broken glass. "Human, they say your kind are different, that you fight for more than money." Rob glanced down the alley she'd emerged from. No pursuit yet, but on Thesara, that meant nothing. He should walk away. Should definitely walk away. "Lady, you've got the wrong—" "My mother." She grabbed his coat with both hands, and he noticed her fingers were shaking. Not from cold. Thesarans ran hot, their blue skin a product of copper-based blood. This was pure fear. "Lord Kazrath took her. Contract bride, he calls it, but we both know what that means." The name hit like ice water. Kazrath controlled half the smuggling routes in this sector, had judges and cops so deep in his pocket they'd forgotten what daylight looked like. Even thinking about crossing him was a death wish written in multiple languages. "I'm sorry about your mother, but save her." The girl's eyes burned with something between desperation and determination. "Save her, and I'm yours. Whatever that means to your kind, I'll be it." The words hung in the rain-soaked air between them. Rob became acutely aware of how her torn dress clung to her body, how her chest rose and fell with each rapid breath. She was offering herself, completely without reservation, and the weight of that offer pressed against his ribs. "You don't even know my name," he said quietly. "I know you're human. I know you haven't looked away from me since I grabbed you." A flush of deeper blue spread across her cheeks, violet in the neon light. "And I know you're already calculating how to say yes without admitting it." Footsteps splashed at the alley mouth, heavy, multiple, moving with purpose. "Shit!" Rob grabbed her arm, hauled her to her feet. "Can you run?" "I've been running for 3 hours." "Then you can run for 5 more minutes." He pulled her deeper into the alley, away from the approaching sounds. "What's your name?" "Amariel." She stumbled, and he caught her waist, noticed how perfectly she fit against his side. "Amariel Thextal." "Well, Amariel Thextal, you just made my life significantly more complicated." They burst out onto a main thoroughfare, the crowds thicker here, the rain starting to steam where it hit the overheated vendor carts. Rob kept his hand on her lower back, guiding her through the press of bodies while his mind raced through options. His apartment was 12 blocks north, but leading Kazrath's men there would burn his safe house. The Port District had places to hide, but a pulse bolt sizzled past his ear, close enough to singe hair. "Down!" He shoved Amariel behind a food cart as 3 more bolts turned the air where they'd been standing into superheated plasma. The vendor, a 4-armed Kelsan, shrieked obscenities in 3 languages as his merchandise exploded. Rob risked a glance around the cart. 4 enforcers in Kazrath's colors, armed with military-grade pulse rifles. Too much firepower for a runaway servant, which meant they knew who Amariel really was, or Kazrath had plans for her mother that went beyond the usual contract bride arrangement. "Stay low," he told Amariel, drawing his pistol. "Nothing fancy, just a reliable slug thrower that wouldn't jam in the rain. When I say run, you go left toward the market district." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." She grabbed his face with both hands, turned him to look at her. "Don't die for me. I need you alive." The kiss was sudden, desperate, tasting of rain and something sweet like alien fruit. Rob's brain short-circuited for a full second before she pulled back, leaving him stunned. "For luck," she whispered. "Isn't that what humans do?" Before he could answer, she was moving, staying low but fast, using the crowd for cover. Rob cursed in 3 languages, 2 of them learned from the master, and popped up to lay down covering fire. Rob's apartment squatted above a noodle shop in the Tangles, the district where nobody asked questions if you paid your rent on time. The stairs creaked a warning symphony as they climbed, Amariel's hand in his, both of them soaked to the skin and breathing hard. "Subtle," she murmured, eyeing the 3 deadbolts and the barely concealed plasma mine in the doorframe. "Do all humans live like they're under siege?" "Just the smart ones." He disabled the mine, unlocked the doors in sequence, and ushered her inside. "And the paranoid ones? Lucky for you, I'm both." The apartment was 1 room, functional and sparse, a bed that folded into the wall, a kitchenette that had seen better decades, a desk covered in star charts and half-assembled weapons. The window offered a spectacular view of another building's brick wall, complete with graffiti in languages he couldn't read. Amariel stood in the center of it all, dripping on his floor, and Rob suddenly saw the space through her eyes. Shabby, temporary, the exact opposite of whatever life she'd known before that collar ended up around her throat. "Showers through there," he said, pointing to a door that barely qualified as such. "There's a shirt in the drawer that should fit-ish." She moved toward the bathroom, then paused, fingers working at the dress's remaining clasps. "Help me." The fabric parted under his fingers, revealing more of that impossibly blue skin. She had scars, thin white lines that suggested a life less pampered than he'd assumed. When the dress finally fell away, she stood in her undergarments, some kind of metallic mesh that left very little to imagination, and turned to face him. "You're not looking away again," she observed, that violet flush creeping up her neck. "You're not exactly making it easy." Good. She disappeared into the bathroom, leaving him standing there like he'd been hit with a stun baton. The shower ran for 20 minutes. Rob used the time to check his security feeds, clean his pistol, and try very hard not to think about blue skin and water and the way she'd kissed him like drowning. When she emerged, wearing his old combat training shirt that hung to mid-thigh, her pink hair damp and curling, he forgot how to breathe for a moment. "So," she said, settling cross-legged on his bed like she belonged there, "let's discuss terms." "Terms?" "For my service, after you saved my mother." She tilted her head, studied him with those impossible eyes. "On my world, a life debt means complete servitude. The saved belongs to the savior until death breaks the bond." Rob pulled his desk chair over, sat facing her. "On mine, it means dinner first." Her brow furrowed. "Is that a mating ritual?" He couldn't help it. He laughed, genuine and surprised. "Sometimes, if you're lucky." "I don't understand human customs." She shifted closer, the shirt riding up her thigh. "But I'm willing to learn, all of them." The air between them crackled with possibility. Rob forced himself to focus on the problem, not the way her skin seemed to shimmer in the apartment's cheap lighting. "Tell me about your mother. Why did Kazrath take her?" "She was a judge in the old government before the coup. She ruled against his interests once too often." Amariel's hands clenched in her lap. "When the military took over, she was supposed to be executed. Instead, Kazrath claimed her as a contract bride, said it was mercy." "How long ago?" 3 weeks. I've been trying to hire someone, anyone, but—" She gestured helplessly. "No one crosses Kazrath, except, apparently, humans who don't know any better." "Oh, I know better. I'm just stupid enough to do it anyway." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "But we do this my way. That means no heroics, no revenge fantasies, and definitely no throwing yourself at Kazrath to trade places with her." "I would never—" "You absolutely would. It's written all over your face." He reached out, lifted her chin with one finger. "Rule 1, princess. We do this my way. Rule 2, you're nobody's servant, partner or nothing." She leaned into his touch, eyes half closing. "Partners share things, don't they? Risks, rewards, beds." "Amariel. That's the first time you've said my name." She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "Say it again." The door exploded inward. The first enforcer through the door caught Rob's chair in the face, teeth and helmet fragments scattering across the floor. The second got Amariel's knee in his groin, sloppy technique but devastating effectiveness, before Rob's fist introduced his nose to the back of his skull. "Window." Rob grabbed the emergency bag from under his bed, muscle memory taking over. The third enforcer was raising his pulse rifle when Amariel threw the still-hot coffee pot at his head. It shattered, buying them 2 seconds. 2 seconds was all Rob needed. The move was perfect, a spinning heel kick that would have made the master proud, but he caught himself halfway through, deliberately overextended, turned it into a graceless tumble that still managed to send the enforcer through the remains of the door. "Very smooth," Amariel gasped, already at the window. "Shut up and jump." They landed on the noodle shop's awning, the fabric tearing but slowing their fall enough to hit the alley running. Pulse bolts turned the wall behind them into slag, the heat washing over them in waves. A hoverbike sat idling at the alley mouth, its owner inside arguing with the noodle vendor about prices. Rob didn't hesitate, yanking the owner out and throwing Amariel onto the seat behind him. "That's theft!" she shouted over the engine's whine. "That's survival! Hold on!" She pressed against his back, arms wrapped around his waist, and Rob gunned it into traffic. The bike responded like a dream, weaving between larger vehicles while pulse bolts sparked off the pavement. Amariel's breath was hot against his neck, her body molded to his as they took a corner at an angle that defied several laws of physics. "Left!" she shouted, and he obeyed without thinking, barely missing a transport truck that would have turned them into paste. "They're herding us toward the warehouse district." Smart girl. Rob could see it now. More enforcers ahead trying to box them in. Time for something stupid. He yanked the bike vertical, riding up the side of a building while Amariel's scream turned into wild laughter. They crested the roof, airborne for 3 heart-stopping seconds, then crashed down onto another street entirely. The enforcers were good, but they were thinking in 2 dimensions. Rob had learned to fight in 3, to use terrain like a weapon, to make physics his ally instead of his master. They lost the pursuit in the steam tunnels under the industrial sector, the bike's engine echoing off dripping pipes while they caught their breath. Amariel was still pressed against him, and when she spoke, her lips brushed his ear. "You're not what you pretend to be." It wasn't a question. "Neither are you," he said quietly. "That knee strike. Someone trained you." My mother believed in being prepared. Her arms tightened around him. But you, when you fight, you hold back, like you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Rob said nothing, but she felt the tension in his shoulders, the way his breathing changed. "It's okay," she whispered. "Whatever you're running from, whatever you're hiding, I trust you anyway." The word trust hung between them like a blade, sharp and dangerous and absolutely necessary for what came next. Sand still cascaded from their clothes when they finally stopped behind the dune. The clash of blades and wail of sirens echoed in the distance, but around them hung a silence so thick Rob could hear Amariel's ragged breathing. He pressed his back against the stone outcropping, pulse hammering in his ears. Sweat stung his eyes as he wiped his forehead and looked at her. She sat beside him, clutching her mother's pendant chain like it could shield them from pursuit. "Think we lost them?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "No." Rob gazed toward the horizon where palace lights flickered. "But we've got 3 days to make them believe otherwise." 3 days later they stood at the service entrance of Lord Kazrath's crystalline fortress. The structure defied physics, spires that sang harmonics in the desert wind, energy shields that rippled like soap bubbles catching sunlight, gardens where water flowed upward and trees grew sideways. The whole thing reeked of power and credits, the kind of ostentation that only came from never having to worry about either. "Remember," Rob murmured, adjusting the neural inhibitor collar around his neck. "Fake, but it would pass casual inspection. You're Thessarian nobility, fallen on hard times. I'm your prize fighter, entered in the blood games. And if they check our story? Then we improvise." He turned to look at her and forgot how to breathe. The slave silks clung to every curve, translucent fabric in shades of violet that complemented her blue skin perfectly. Gold chains connected the minimal pieces, jangling softly when she moved. Her pink hair was piled high, exposing the elegant line of her neck, and someone, probably the forger who'd sold them their identities, had painted intricate patterns on her exposed skin that seemed to pulse with their own light. "The outfit bothers you?" She'd noticed his stare, of course. A smile played at the corner of her mouth. "Bothers isn't the word I'd use." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the jasmine oil she'd rubbed into her skin. "Then what word would you use?" "Dangerous." His voice came out rougher than intended. "You're dangerous in that." "Good." She traced a finger down his chest over the leather harness that marked him as a fighter. "Maybe danger is what we need." The guard at the entrance, a Vraxian with ceremonial armor, leered at Amariel before waving them through. The scanner passed over their fake IDs without alarm. They were in. The throne room hit like a physical force, soaring ceilings painted with constellations that moved in real time, floors of polished obsidian that reflected everything like dark water, and everywhere the press of bodies. Aliens of every species mingled, their perfumes and pheromones creating a cocktail that made Rob's head swim. Servers glided through on anti-grav platforms, offering drinks that glowed and food that might have been alive. And there, on a raised dais at the far end, sat Lord Kazrath. The crime lord was Kelson, 4 arms allowing him to simultaneously sign documents, gesture to subordinates, eat, and fondle the woman chained beside him. But Rob barely noticed him, because that woman was Celine. Even in chains, she commanded the room. Where Amariel's beauty was fire and passion, Celine's was ice and precision. Her blue skin had a pearl-like quality, shifting between sapphire and amethyst as she moved. Silver hair, not gray but actual silver, fell in waves past her shoulders. The chains draped across her body were designed to look like jewelry, but Rob recognized the subtle burn marks on her wrist from the electrical current running through them. She wore what might generously be called a dress, strips of white fabric that left her legs bare to mid-thigh and dipped low enough in front to be scandalous on any world. But she sat with such regal bearing that she might have been holding court instead of being held captive. Amariel made a sound, half sob, half growl, and started forward. Rob caught her wrist, pulled her against him as if in an embrace. "Not yet," he breathed against her ear. "We stick to the plan. That's my mother in chains, and you running to her gets us all killed." He turned her in his arms, making it look like intimacy instead of restraint. "We're performers, remember? Here for the blood games." The announcement came an hour later, after Rob had registered for the fights and they'd been given quarters in the fighter's wing. A servant, human, Rob noted with surprise, summoned them to the main hall for presentation. The crowd parted as they walked, whispers following in their wake. A human entering the blood games was apparently noteworthy. Entering with a Thessarian beauty on his arm made him either very brave or very stupid. Lord Kazrath's voice boomed across the hall, translated through neural implants for those who didn't speak Kelson. "Tonight's entertainment. Our newest fighter wishes to present himself and his companion." They climbed the steps to the dais. Up close, Kazrath smelled of rotting fruit and violence. His 4 eyes tracked independently, 2 on Rob, 2 on Amariel. "A human," he mused. "How delightful. And you bring such a pretty prize. Tell me, girl, what's your name?" "Vara," Amariel lied smoothly, not meeting her mother's eyes. "Vara of House Ninth Moon." "A fallen house." Kazrath's laugh was wet, unpleasant. "And you, human? What brings you to my games?" "Credits," Rob said simply. "Same as everyone." "Everyone?" Celine's voice cut through the air like silk over steel. She hadn't moved, but suddenly every eye was on her. "I don't think this one is like everyone, my lord." She rose from her seat, chains singing softly, and walked the 3 steps that separated them. This close, Rob could see Amariel in her, the same proud chin, the same way of tilting her head when studying something interesting. "So," she purred, circling him slowly, "my daughter found herself a human warrior." The hall went silent. Amariel's hand tightened on Rob's arm hard enough to bruise. Celine continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "How unexpected. Most of your kind who come here are broken things. But you—" She stopped in front of him, reached up to trace his jaw with one finger. "You have old eyes in a young face, eyes that have seen death and decided it was boring." "Mother," Amariel's voice cracked. "Please." "Mother?" Kazrath's interest sharpened. Well, well, a family reunion. How touching. Celine turned to her daughter, and for just a moment her mask slipped. Pain, love, and fury warred in her expression before she smoothed it away. "Foolish child," she said softly, "I sacrificed myself so you could be free. Free means nothing alone." The two women stared at each other, an entire conversation happening in silence. Then Celine laughed, bright and bitter. "Then you're more foolish than I thought." She turned back to Kazrath. "My lord, since we're to have entertainment, might I make a suggestion?" "Always, my jewel." "Let me choose which prisoner your champion faces tomorrow, a mother's gift to her daughter, to show her what happens to heroes." Kazrath's grin revealed too many teeth. "Delightful. Choose." Celine walked the line of registered fighters with deliberate slowness. Each step made her chains sing, a funeral dirge for whoever she selected. She paused at a Vraxian covered in battle scars, moved on, stopped at a cyborg whose arms had been replaced with weapon systems, shook her head. Then she returned to Rob. "This one." Her fingers trailed across his jaw again, nails leaving the faintest pressure. "He has the look of someone who's died before and refused to stay down." The crowd murmured. A human against Kazrath's champion was suicide. The champion, they called it the Butcher, had killed 47 fighters in the last year alone. "No!" Amariel stepped forward. "Take me instead. I'll fight." "You'll do nothing," Celine said sharply. Then, so quietly only Rob and Amariel could hear. "Trust me, daughter, I can see what he hides. The question is, will he show it for us?" Her eyes met Rob's, and in them he saw recognition. Somehow, impossibly, she knew. Not everything, maybe, but enough. "Tomorrow at sunset," Kazrath announced. "The human faces the Butcher. If he wins, which he won't, the lovely Celine goes free. If he loses, well," he pulled Celine back onto his lap, "I'll still have my jewel and her daughter will learn the price of hope." Their quarters were luxurious by fighter standards, an actual bed instead of a cot, a window overlooking the gravity-defying gardens, even a small refresher unit. Amariel paced the length of it like a caged predator while Rob sat on the bed, systematically checking his equipment. "She knows," Amariel said for the 5th time. "Somehow she knows about you." "Maybe." Rob tested the edge of a blade, set it aside. "Or maybe she's gambling." "My mother doesn't gamble." She stopped pacing, stood in front of him. "Take off your shirt." "What?" "If you're fighting tomorrow, I need to see what we're working with. Injuries, weak points." She crossed her arms. "Unless you're shy?" Rob pulled the shirt over his head, heard her sharp intake of breath. Not at the muscle, though 3 years of drifting hadn't completely erased what the master had built, but at the scars. They told a story in pale lines and puckered marks, blade work across his ribs, burn marks on his shoulders, a starburst of tissue on his back where something had hit hard enough to crack bone. These scars. Her fingers ghosted over them, touch light as breath. Someone hurt you, trained you through pain. The words pulled him back, against his will, to another time. 10 years ago. Earth, the mountain compound. 18-year-old Rob hit the ground hard enough to taste blood. Again. The master stood over him, her red hair catching the sunset like fire. Beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Perfect form serving lethal function. "Pain is the only honest teacher," she said, her voice carrying that Irish lilt that made even criticism sound like music. "Get up." He got up. He always got up. That was the point. Later, after he'd finally landed a blow, just one, a glancing strike that caught her shoulder, she'd smiled. The real smile, not the instructor's mask. "Happy birthday, boy." Oh. The kiss had been unexpected, fierce, claiming, tasting of whiskey and violence. Her hands had gone to her training vest, started to pull it off, and he'd seen hunger in her eyes that had nothing to do with combat. "Rob?" He snapped back to the present. Amariel was staring at him, concern written across her features. "The master believed pain was the only honest teacher," he said quietly. "And what did it teach you?" "That I never wanted to be the one giving the lesson." She leaned down, pressed her lips to the scar over his heart, the oldest one, the first one, from his first day of training when he'd been 8 and too stupid to know when to stay down. He caught her hands, their faces inches apart. "If I don't make it tomorrow, you will. But if I don't, then I'll burn this whole palace down to follow you." The door chimed. They pulled apart as it opened, revealing Celine flanked by 2 guards. "Mother!" Amariel's voice could have frozen flame. "5 minutes," Celine told the guards. "Private family business." They withdrew. The moment the door closed, Celine's composure cracked. She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Amariel into a fierce embrace. "My brave, stupid girl," she whispered. "Why did you come?" "Because you're all I have left." Celine pulled back, cupped her daughter's face. Then she turned to Rob, all business. "The butcher has been modified with Vraxian combat genes. It's fast, but it telegraphs with its secondary arms. Watch for the tell." She pulled a small vial from her dress. "Stimulants, military grade. Take them an hour before the fight." "Why help me?" Rob asked. "Because my daughter chose you, and because—" She studied him with those ancient eyes. "I knew someone trained like you once. A woman with red hair and hands that could kill or caress with equal skill. She spoke of a student once. Her greatest work, she called him. The one who walked away." Rob's blood turned to ice. "The master is dead," he said flatly. "Is she?" Celine's smile was knowing. Death is such a flexible concept these days, but that's a conversation for after you survive tomorrow. She moved to leave, paused at the door. "There's an old Thessarian custom. Before a blood match, it's considered good luck to share warmth with those you're fighting for." Her eyes flicked between Rob and Amariel. Just warmth, nothing more. But the universe listens to skin and heartbeats and the promises we make in darkness. The door closed behind her, leaving them alone with the weight of tomorrow. Amariel sat beside him on the bed, close enough that their thighs touched. "That custom she mentioned, it's real. And I'm asking." She took his hand, laced their fingers together. "Just warmth, just being close, so the universe knows what you're fighting for." They lay down fully clothed, her back pressed to his chest, his arm around her waist. Her skin radiated heat like a furnace, and he could feel her heartbeat through their joined hands. Outside, the artificial stars in the garden ceiling began their nightly dance. "Tell me about Earth," she whispered. So he did. Told her about real rain that didn't burn, about oceans that went on forever, about mountains where masters trained students to be weapons and sometimes forgot to teach them how to be human again. She fell asleep to his voice, and he stayed awake counting her breaths, memorizing the weight of her against him. Tomorrow he would fight. Tomorrow he might die. But tonight, for just these hours, he had this: warmth and trust and the faint scent of jasmine from her hair. The universe was listening. He hoped it would be enough. The arena stank of jasmine and blood. Rob stepped through the fighter's gate into sensory chaos. 1,000 alien voices merged into one hungry roar, the crackling ozone smell of energy barriers mixing with sweat and fear pheromones from a dozen species. The sand beneath his boots was real, imported from some desert world and stained rust brown from previous matches. Above, the afternoon suns, both artificial, beat down with programmed cruelty. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the stimulants Celine had given him singing through his bloodstream. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to sharpen reflexes already honed past human normal. The crowd's roar doubled as his opponent entered from the opposite gate. The butcher stood 8 feet tall, its skin like cooling lava, black with veins of orange that pulsed with each heartbeat. 4 arms, the lower pair ending in bone blades that had been surgically grafted to replace hands. Eyes that tracked independently, one focused on Rob while the other scanned the crowd. When it smiled, 3 rows of teeth gleamed. "Human," it said in heavily accented trade speak, voice like gravel in a meat grinder. "I will make art from your bones." "Promises, promises," Rob muttered, circling left. The crowd loved it. Credits changed hands in the betting boxes, odds shifting with every step. In the royal box, Kazrath leaned forward, all 4 hands gripping the rail. Beside him, Celine sat perfectly still, but Rob caught the tension in her shoulders. Amariel stood with the other companions, guards flanking her, her face a mask of controlled terror. The butcher moved first, faster than anything that size had a right to be. The upper right fist caught Rob in the ribs, lifting him off his feet. He hit the sand hard, rolled, came up gasping. The crowd roared approval. "Too slow! Human!" The butcher's lower blades whistled through the air where Rob's head had been a second before. Rob stumbled back, let his left leg drag slightly. The next swing clipped his shoulder, spinning him around. Blood splattered the sand, his blood bright red against the brown. He went down on one knee, breathing hard. In the royal box, Kazrath laughed, wet and satisfied. "Your daughter chose poorly, my jewel." Celine's response carried despite the crowd noise, calm as still water. "My daughter chose perfectly. Watch." The butcher grabbed Rob by the throat with its upper left hand, lifting him until his feet dangled. The arena fell silent except for Amariel's scream. She'd broken free from her guards, was fighting toward the barrier. "I'll take his place." Her voice cracked with desperation. "I'll serve you willingly, Lord Kazrath. Anything, just let him go." The butcher's grip tightened. Black spots danced in Rob's vision. Through the roar in his ears, he heard Celine's voice, soft but carrying. "Now would be good, warrior." Rob's lips moved. The arena's acoustic dampeners caught it, amplified it, sent it rippling through the crowd. "Nobody owns them." The crack of the butcher's wrist breaking echoed like a gunshot. Rob's feet hit sand. His stance shifted, weight perfectly distributed, hands loose at his sides, the lazy slouch replaced by something that made primitive brains throughout the arena scream predator. "I am Rob Kane." His voice carried without shouting, each word precise as a blade stroke. "Last student of the Master of the Void Mountain, I've killed things that would make your nightmares weep." He tilted his head, studying the butcher like it was something scraped off his boot. "And these women? They're under my protection." The butcher struck with all 4 arms simultaneously. Rob flowed like water. Under the upper right, around the upper left, the lower blades passing close enough to kiss but never touching. His palm strike hit the creature's solar plexus, if it had one, with enough force to crack the chitinous armor there. As it doubled over, his knee came up, caught it where nose would be on a human face. The butcher staggered back, orange blood streaming from its face. It roared, charged again. This time, Rob didn't dodge. He met it head-on, caught both upper arms and used the creature's momentum to throw it over his shoulder. 800 pounds of genetically modified killer hit the sand hard enough to crack the arena floor beneath. Before it could rise, Rob's boot came down on its primary throat. "Yield!" The butcher thrashed, lower blade scoring grooves in the sand. Rob increased pressure incrementally. "Yield, or I start removing pieces. Your choice." "I yield." The words came out strangled but clear. Rob stepped back. The arena was silent, the kind of silence that preceded riots or religious experiences. Then someone started slow clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, the sound was deafening. In the royal box, Kazrath's face had turned an unhealthy shade of purple. "Kill them!" he shrieked at his guards. "All three of them, now!" This was the moment Rob had been waiting for. "Stop!" Rob's voice cut through the chaos as guards poured into the arena. "By human custom, proven in combat, I claim right of protection." The guards hesitated. Even Kazrath paused, confusion flickering across his features. Rob continued, making it up as he went, channeling every moment of the master's lessons in psychological warfare. "These women are my bonded. By the ancient laws of Earth, demonstrated through trial by combat, they are under my protection. Anyone who touches them challenges not just me, but all of humanity." It was complete bullshit. Earth had no such law, no unified government to enforce it if it did. But the crowd didn't know that. Amariel caught on first. She broke free from the frozen guards, ran to Rob's side. "The bond is witnessed," she shouted, playing along with theatrical flair. Celine rose from her seat beside Kazrath, chains singing as she moved. Her smile could have powered cities. "The bond is sealed." The murmuring started in the slave pens, spread through the servant passages, reached the guards themselves. If a human could claim freedom through combat, if Earth would back such claims. "This is absurd," Kazrath sputtered. "Guards, I said." The first bottle flew from the crowd, then another. A bench followed, then someone's prosthetic arm. The guards, faced with a rapidly deteriorating situation and uncertain about the political implications of killing someone claiming Earth protection, hesitated. That hesitation was all the opening needed. The riot started in the upper tiers and cascaded down like a waterfall of violence. Slaves turned on masters. Servants grabbed weapons. The carefully maintained order of Kazrath's arena dissolved into beautiful chaos. Through it all, Rob carved a path toward the royal box, Amariel at his side. She'd grabbed a guard's shock baton, wielded it with more enthusiasm than skill. Was any of that true? About Earth? Not a single word. Rob ducked a thrown blade, returned it with interest. But they don't know that. They reached the box as Celine was calmly strangling Kazrath with her own chains. She looked up as they approached, smiled sweetly. "Hello, darlings. Give me just a moment. Mom, we need to go." "One more second." The crack of Kazrath's neck was audible even over the riot. "There, much better." They ran through the palace corridors, the sound of fighting echoing behind them. Servants pointed the way to the hangars, some even joining them. By the time they reached the ships, they had a following of nearly 30 escaped slaves. Rob hot-wired a yacht, Kazrath's personal transport, because why not add insult to injury, while Amariel helped survivors aboard. Celine took the co-pilot's seat, her fingers dancing over controls with surprising competence. "You can fly?" Rob asked, firing up the engines. "I was many things before I was a judge, young man." She entered coordinates with practiced ease, including a smuggler. "Where are we going?" "I know a place." The yacht lifted off, palace defense turrets swiveling too late to matter. "A gift from my teacher. Never thought I'd use it." As they broke atmosphere, Amariel threw herself into his arms, nearly sending them into a spin. "You saved us." "We saved each other." He set the autopilot, turned to face both women. "That speech about human law, complete lies, wasn't it?" "Every word." Celine's laugh was rich, warm, utterly without judgment. "I think I'm going to enjoy learning human customs." Her eyes raked over him with decidedly non-maternal interest. All of them. Amariel's grip on his arm tightened possessively. "Mother." "What?" "I'm simply expressing cultural curiosity." But her smile was pure predator. 3 months later, the colony sprawled across New Eden's southern continent like hope made manifest. Prefab buildings gave way to actual architecture as more refugees arrived daily, all claiming Earth protection that didn't exist from a government that was very confused by the sudden diplomatic incidents. Rob stood on the balcony of what was technically the governor's mansion, but was really just a larger prefab with delusions of grandeur. The local sun painted the sky purple and gold, and he could smell Amariel's latest attempt at cooking wafting from the kitchen. "It's supposed to be pasta," she called out. "The database said 8 minutes." "The database assumes Earth pasta," he called back, "not whatever you've created in there." "It's purple," Celine observed from her seat on the balcony, sipping something that glowed faintly green. "And I believe it's moving." "Pasta doesn't move, Mom." "This pasta does, darling." Rob turned to go help, or at least contain the damage, when Amariel appeared in the doorway. The setting sun backlit her, turning her blue skin to lavender, her pink hair to fire. She had one hand on her stomach, a gesture so subtle he almost missed it. Almost. "Amariel?" She bit her lip, suddenly shy. "So, remember that Thessarian custom about sharing warmth before battle?" "Vividly." "Well, it turns out there's sometimes consequences. Good ones," she added quickly, seeing his expression. "Really good ones. In about 7 months." The world tilted. Rob crossed to her in 2 strides, pulled her against him. "You're sure?" "The medical scanner confirmed it this morning." She looked up at him, tears turning her eyes to silver. "Are you angry?" "Angry?" He laughed, lifted her off her feet, spun her around. "I'm terrified, ecstatic, possibly having a cardiac event, but not angry." Celine rose gracefully, crossed to them. "My daughter carries the child of Earth's first Rim World governor." She raised her glowing drink. "To the future, however complicated it might be." "Speaking of complicated," Amariel said, wiping her eyes, "Mom, stop flirting with my future husband." "I'm not flirting, I'm being diplomatic." "You grabbed his ass at the council meeting." "That was an accident. My hand slipped." "3 times?" Rob escaped their bickering to deal with the pasta situation. It had indeed achieved sentience and was attempting to escape via the ventilation system. As he corralled it with a pot lid, his comm unit chimed. "Sir?" The security chief's voice was tense. "There's someone at the main gate. Says she has a delivery for you. Won't give her name, but, sir, you need to see this." 20 minutes later, Rob stood at the colony's main entrance. A single figure waited beyond the fence, wrapped in a dark cloak despite the warm evening. Female, judging by the shape, though the hood obscured her face. "Can I help you?" he called out. "Hello, boyo." The Irish lilt froze his blood. "You've done well for yourself." She pushed back the hood. Red hair caught the dying light like copper flames. The face was exactly as he remembered, ageless, beautiful, terrible. The master looked exactly as she had the day he'd walked away from the mountain. "You're dead," he said flatly. "Death is such a limiting concept." She smiled, the expression pulling at the scar he'd given her during their last fight. "I brought you a wedding present. Several, actually." She set down a case he hadn't noticed her carrying. "Diplomatic credentials from Earth. Real ones. Turns out they're grateful someone's organizing the Rim Worlds, even if you did it by accident." Another smile. "The colony is yours officially. Governor Kane has a nice ring to it." "Why?" "Because you were my best student. Because you walked away when killing became too easy. Because—" She paused, pulled her hood back up. "Because I'm curious what you'll become without me." She turned to leave, paused. "The blue one's pregnant. I can smell it from here. She's strong. The older one wants you too. That should be entertaining." A soft laugh. "My little boy, all grown up and building kingdoms." "Master, don't." The word cracked like a whip. "That was another life. For both of us. But Kane?" She glanced back, and for just a moment, he saw hunger in her eyes that had nothing to do with violence. "We'll see each other again. Count on it." She walked into the darkening desert and vanished between one heartbeat and the next. Rob stood there for a long moment, case in hand, watching the empty horizon. Then he turned and walked back to his new life, his complicated, dangerous, impossible new life. Inside the governor's mansion, Amariel had given up on the pasta and ordered takeout from the Vraxian place down the street. Celine was teaching 3 escaped slaves to read. The colony's lights were coming on, one by one, like stars being born. "Everything all right?" Amariel asked, noting his expression. "Yeah." He set the case down, pulled her close. "Everything's perfect." She kissed him, tasting of alien spices and hope. Liar. Optimist. "So," Celine said, not looking up from her teaching, "when's the wedding? I assume humans have weddings?" "Next month," Rob said, making the decision on the spot. "Biggest celebration this world's ever seen." "Good." Celine finally looked up, her smile wicked. "I'll need time to find a properly scandalous mother of the bride dress." Amariel groaned. Rob laughed. Outside, New Eden's first free city grew building by building, life by life, dream by dream. And somewhere in the desert a ghost with red hair smiled and whispered to the wind, "My beautiful, dangerous boy, let's see what empires you'll build, and which ones you'll burn." The stars came out, strange constellations for a strange new world, and life, complicated, messy, perfect life, went on.